Hello everybody and welcome back to the Evergreen Athlete Podcast. I'm reclining on a very green sofa right now that I normally have in the back of my videos, which I really find very comfortable. But when I'm looking at this video right now, I've got my camera just in front of me. I feel like I'm almost sitting back and I look like that Ricky Gervais meme when he's at a house party, but I'm going to rock with it anyway. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and it's 2026, so we are going to become a completely new person. We're going to right all of our wrongs. We're going to hit every single fucking goal on our list, and it's going to be the best year ever, right? Am I right? Well, yeah, quite possibly. But it is a new year, and I certainly feel as I get that fraction a little bit older, I want to make sure that I maximise every year. Perhaps maybe not maximise, just don't look back with regret. I think that's the biggest part for myself, of just like thinking about all those years that you piss around and don't really make a concentrated effort, and now it's an opportunity to be able to move forward. So towards the back end of last year, that was my first year fully in business as a solopreneur with Evergreen, and I spent a fair amount of time reflecting on what it was, and ultimately I thought it was a great year. As I perhaps put out on social media somewhere else, I didn't achieve every goal. I almost missed every single goal that I made, but I'll be honest, like the results that I got, I was still ecstatic with, which we will talk a bit more about myself, but more about today. But it also means that I've been trying to think about what do I want to achieve and move towards this year. And definitely in the first year of running a coaching company, the main instinct is, can I pay my bills, and am I going to be able to survive, or am I going to have to go back and get another job? But once that hurdle and you've kind of broken the back of it, I think it opens up a lot more freedom and choice and trust in yourself that it will be okay. If you keep making the right steps forward, then things will work out. So I'm very much in that mindset at the moment, and that means that now in 2026 I can hopefully pursue things that I think will be more beneficial for my clients, the members, myself, and perhaps a slightly longer term place, but we can come to that in a bit. However, if you have been setting goals, or if you got to the end of last year and you thought, right, God, I really didn't make any of those or have any progress, well, the first thing I would say is you probably did make progress in some manner. Be a little bit easier on yourself. The second thing, I do find some of the common problems that people run into when they are setting goals is that they forget about them. They write them down at this time of year, they put them on a piece of paper or a notepad somewhere, perhaps on a note on their phone, and they forget about them. They never review them again. The other one is that they just start meandering off task. They just start, something else comes up, a shiny object they get a little bit interested in, and they kind of meander off the original task and start going down that direction. And then it might happen again, and they start meandering around again, and they never really sink their teeth into something consequential. And then probably the last one is, slightly linked to that, is if they're not meandering, then they're just adding things to their life, to the day. They become so busy and a little bit overwhelmed, and again lose their direction because they're just swamped, and it becomes very, very difficult. So what I want to do today is I want to walk through some of the principles, and this is literally, you can do this in a step-by-step manner, that I use and have used for the last 16 to 18 years with clients, with myself, and when running various different businesses as well, to make achieving goals more likely. Now, this is not about setting them. I think there are lots of little frameworks. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with the SMART framework or whatever. There are tons of frameworks out there. Setting goals is easy. It's like having ideas. Ideas are easy. Execution is hard. What I'm going to talk about right now is things that you can implement to make it more likely that you will achieve those goals. So let's crack on then. And the first one is, and this will be a weird one, is I want you to make them bigger. I want those goals to be bigger, more aggressive, slightly scarier. Now, why do I say this? Look, there are lots of people that have done a shitload of research into goal setting, and one of them was a guy called Gary Latham, who I think has spent 3 or 4 decades researching goal setting theory, creating this theory. And one key thing that they found was that big goals led to big effort and big persistence towards those goals. So you might be thinking, yeah, but I know I'll never hit them. I know it's going to be a nightmare and I'll feel terrible at the end of it. Now, this is the real mindset shift that I think makes has made a difference for me in the last couple of years and makes a difference for my clients when they come in is it's not about hitting that specific goal. That is not the point of goal setting, and this has been actually outlined in the research. The point of setting goals, setting big goals, is that it's going to stretch your performance and push you further than you would have done if you were setting vague goals, low goals, or no goals. And let that kind of sink in a little bit. It's not about hitting the goal. Sorry folks, I just had to take a quick pause there. We had someone arrive at the front door. Very glamorous. So, as I was saying, it's not about hitting the big goal perfectly head on. It is about stretching your performance further than you would have if it was vague, too easy. And that's where being comfortable with not succeeding is a really important part of this. So I find that people are often scared of setting big goals because they have negative experiences. They feel like they're not able to achieve them. They fear that they're going to fail in public, that if they say it out loud to friends, they might look stupid. But that is, again, you're limiting your enjoyment, ambition, perseverance towards something because of fear of how you'll look extrinsically, which is really not a great way to live. We all obviously care in some manner how we are in society, but when it comes to achieving big things, I do think that high performers are more willing to put themselves out there, not care about the result, not care about the result, not care about looking stupid, and keep striving towards it, and eventually they will hit something. So there is a cliche phrase, I think it is, shoot for the stars and you might hit the moon. And sometimes it is critiqued for saying like, well, no, I was aiming for the moon. They're all on the same direction, they're all on the same trajectory, there's just a certain level with them. So that'd be my first thing. Set a big goal, set a bigger goal than you wanted to. And that might be something along the lines of, rather than just saying I'm going to enter a 10k or I'm going to enter a Hyrox, give yourself a time that you want to be able to hit. That would be, because that is going to help outline and make your behaviour much more specific when you are training for it. So the second thing is plan for what will go wrong. Now, when people are in planning mode, they are kind of looking at the sequence of events of what they're going to do, how they're going to get there. But planning for problems is difficult because we don't really know when they're going to occur. So what should we do and how can we do it? And that's particularly prevalent in sport. Now, lots of people will write an annual plan for performance, but no one's writing like when an injury is going to come up, because you just don't know. But the likelihood is that one will happen, or maybe more will happen per year, and it's about trying to work around that, trying to work through it, trying to think of different strategies rather than going completely off course. So this is called a pre-mortem. It's done, I think, again, when people are trying to create goals for their life or goals for their business. But what I want you to think about right now, and I have a downloadable worksheet that you can find in the show notes of here, and you can work through this yourself, is if you get to the end of this year and you have not made any progress, you have not achieved these goals, you are exactly the same place that you were before, what key things would have gone wrong or could have caused that? So take a moment, you're going to write down those. It could be 3, it could be 5. What would happen? What things have taken you off course before have caused these problems? So when we have those, now it's a case of then working through them and going like, right, what can I do to help prevent that? Or when it does happen, what is my strategy for solving that? So a really easy one with our context here is an injury. Now, do you have a trusted physiotherapy clinic that you can go to, a practitioner that you know knows their stuff and you can speak to about your injury? If you have had an injury that has recurred again, do you have a clear plan that you know if you follow will help improve and help rectify that? Now, these are key things that you can have that will fast track that process of experiencing a setback and then getting back on it. It'll also mean that when it does happen, or if it does happen, you just feel a lot more comfortable with that experience. It's not an unknown. And again, if I use the injury example as a key one there, I do think that a lot of people, when they hurt themselves, the feeling of pain, catastrophizing and problems is amplified because they don't know. It is unknown. There are lots of questions that they've got and they're not really too sure where to look next. I always give the example of like when I stub my toe when I'm walking around the house wearing my socks, and I'm looking down, I'm like, this is it, I've broken my toe, snapped the nail, it's going to be pissing blood everywhere. And then as soon as you take your sock off, you realise it's just a stubbed toe, the pain subsides, and then you just get on with your life in about 30 seconds. All right, that's the second one. The third one, and if you've listened to any of these podcasts before, you'll know I find this really important, is clarifying your purpose. So again, running a time, entering an event, losing a certain amount of weight, jumping a height, lifting a weight, these are all very objective markers. But if you are unable to connect those to the reason why that is, I will say hand on heart that most people will struggle to achieve them because they are not emotionally understanding themselves and what this brings to their wider life. So I will find that the majority of my discovery calls or initial calls with people before they join the program, that's the key thing that I'm trying to understand from them. It's like, what is it that is ingrained in your character, in your behavior, that this links to? So I spoke to someone recently, and it was actually they were wanting, it's the competitiveness that they were that they want to bring out. They've started training, they are really getting into it, they can see how they compare to a couple other people, and they want to see, can I start chipping away, working through my group of training partners and start beating them one by one? That excites them, and good on them for that. Another person has a real ingrained belief in gratitude, which is they found quite interesting to bring up in our conversation, where they were like, no, I'm just relatively grateful for having a healthy body and being in a good place, and I want to make the most of it. So, and I haven't been looking after my health and taking my training very seriously. So now that I'm aware of that, this is the reason. This is why I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. This is why I'm going to do my fucking rehab exercises or change what I eat and not just go out every single weekend. So being able to link the objective, I call them the ambitions, to your greater aspiration is a real key thing to help keep you on track. And then have it somewhere where you can see it regularly. So for me, I have a spreadsheet, bit of a spreadsheet nerd, where I punch in little things, which I'll talk about in a moment. And at the very top of that spreadsheet, it has a key statement for me for my year. It's my kind of mission. Now, I've not done this forever. I've only done this for the last couple of years. But because I open that spreadsheet every day to input bits of numbers elsewhere, I remind myself. And I think that's a key thing. If you remember one of my earlier points of people forgetting what they're doing and why they're doing it, because they're just in life being busy. All right, moving on, and this links very nicely, is keep score. So if you have been involved in sport, and if you haven't been involved in sport, why the hell are you listening to this podcast? But if you have, you want to know what the score of the sport is. If you're involved in running endurance activities, you probably know your HRV, your power scores, what minute per kilometre you are running for 5k, 10k, your resting heart rate. You have a load of data, and all of that data doesn't really matter that much for the end goal of running a distance at a certain time. Like, it's how long does it take you to get from A to B? And all these other things are all floating around as proxy measures for that, because we know that if you have a lower resting heart rate, then that is going to probably mean that you've got a well-functioning heart and it's able to pump a lot of blood and a lot of oxygen around there. Now, when it comes to setting your goals for the year and looking to achieve them, having that big North Star there is very important, but it can, and it probably will, feel quite overwhelming. I've just encouraged you to make a really big goal, and seeing the gap between where you are right now and where it is in the future will be like, oh fuck, where do I even start? This is enormous. I don't even know what to do. And this is where just making smaller plans into smaller plans and starting to break it down until you can get to a stage where you just have a list of tasks that you want to be doing every single week or month to be moving towards that. And those are the things that you should be keeping score of. Those are the things that you're just ticking off. So again, if I use myself as an example, a reflection that I had from last year was that I don't really have that kind of mid-morning and mid-evening time available anymore with a son and a second one on the way. That 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock, and particularly that kind of 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock is bedtime, cooking dinner, all that stuff. So I don't have those times, or don't like to use them for work. So I need to be able to find another bit of time for me to be able to achieve a certain task. So my thing was, I need to be able to get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and just for an hour, just 1 hour, 3 times a week. If I can do that tasks consistently, then I think I'm going to be able to write enough to be able to produce the things I need to produce to be able to hit my goal. So all I'm fixated on is that task, and then keeping score of that task going along. Some people will refer to this as habit tracking. It's kind of semantics really, but I do think habit is the wrong word for it. We're tracking behaviors. A habit implies that it's autonomous or automatic. I'm certainly not getting up at 6 o'clock automatically. I'm having to force that behavior, but I'm hopefully going to force it so many times that eventually it might become just part of who I am and part of my identity and what I do. But these are behaviors that we're tracking, and these behaviors will stack and they will lead to bigger outcomes. And if we can start getting on top of them, making a bit of a game of it, I think that makes the whole thing much more interesting. And you build this weird, arbitrary thing that you're quite proud of. So from spending a lot of time not drinking alcohol last year and keeping a track of that, I've ended up having this asset of I don't want to break the chain. I don't want to lose this until I've achieved the goal. And the bigger it gets, the less you want to lose it. So it starts to kind of gamify it and play into a bit of psychology there. The next one is to create multiple chances for you to win. And again, this is specifically around athletic performance goals. So if you have a key event, again, a 5K, 10K, a Hyrox on the calendar, you are putting a lot on the line for that. And we have a lot of well-practiced principles in exercise science and training. Principle of specificity, progressive overload, recovery, all these other elements that go into developing programs. But what we don't have is we don't have a laser-assured way of guaranteeing that someone is going to turn up on the start line and they are always going to perform in personal best when they need to. We do think that we can make improvements and we can start stacking those things up. But you're putting a lot of the line if you just have that one event. So let's say, again, if I make this a bigger one, if you're training for a marathon or a half marathon, you should be looking at when can I book in 5Ks and 10Ks and these smaller events where you have a chance to perform and feel good and get some feedback on the training process. Now, having those events is just generally a good practice for those kind of events, but I think it just takes the pressure off that one big event so that when you arrive on that day, and let's just say you have a crap night's sleep, let's just say you get a stomach bug, your shoes fall apart, I don't know, all sorts of weird things, then you're not thinking that event was a total failure because you've got this other evidence that it was good and you are doing the right thing. I think that has another good knock-on effect, is that often when people are into these events and they pile a lot of pressure on it and they don't think about life afterwards or have an event afterwards, that's when all that people kind of go dip in and out of training and they want something else. So again, it might feel like a bit of overwhelming at this point in time, but I would encourage you, as you approach your main event or the main objective, if you've got something like that, to try and think about what happens afterwards. Have the next event lined up there, so you stay on that hamster wheel, you keep moving forward, and that starts to continually evolve your performance. And look, those are the key elements, and I think that when you do those, you've got a lot of stuff going for you. You're going to make the training process more fun because you're going to feel like you're winning a little bit more frequently. You're getting more consistent feedback on what you're doing and the efforts that you're putting in and whether that's actually having an outcome for you. You are gamifying it. You are developing yourself as a person. And again, with all of these goals that people work themselves towards, it's really just about putting yourself in a place where you're able to continually try and solve lots of little problems and try and get around there. And I do think that when you look at elite athletes or even elite people in business or whatever realm in life, just high performance, people that are really excellent, it's that they have created more opportunities and they've solved more problems. And that is ultimately what's going to keep developing you as a person and moving forwards. Anyway, that was a quick fire of some elements that I think that are really useful for people to help them achieve their goals. If you get those lined up, stacked up one after another, then that is massive. So if you are interested in hearing a bit more about that, I am been sending out emails every single week to my email list. The link is below. Please join the email list on that front and you will be able to get access to these sooner. As I said earlier on, I've got a worksheet for completing that pre-mortem. If you find that link below, you can get it free access, so you don't even need an email, just download it straight away. And I will see you in the next episode.